Hello, all Europlasticians. I'm really excited to have this roundtable today. Randy is going to lead us in the roundtable around what are the critical aspects, what are the decision-making protocols for coping in unpredictable environments. So, Randy, we're all eager to do this and share our thoughts and learn from you. So, why don't you kick off the discussion? Why don't you tell us a bit more about the situation, or I don't know, what would be a good way to start, Randy? What do you think?
Okay, well, thank you. Honored to be here and to have some of the colleagues on here and everything. But yeah, it's one of the things that we're really going to be kind of focusing on today is that in today's world, not everything is overly predictable. And I know I think some of the people know that my background is in aviation and military aviation. I know in that role we had a term that was called VUCA, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that term over the last few years has actually started to move over into describing the business arena and the civilian business arena. And so what we're going to do is the central theme that we'll talk about, and I'll just give a very quick picture, and then we'll open up the discussion to let everybody become involved and contribute your thoughts and your insights and things of that nature. That'll be the whole purpose of today. And the one thing that I hope that people leave from today is this concept of how our neuroplasticity and how our brain is working to reach real success and minimize risk in what our team is involved with has to be very deliberate and critical when you're in one of these rapidly changing, unpredictable sort of environments. And that's one thing that I hope, and what I hope is that people that hear this, either in our group today or in recording, is that as they go forward, they'll be looking at what they need to kind of be aware of. How do they need to sort of be lead their team and sort of develop this. And so that's just kind of what I wanted to share. And what I thought I'd do is give you just a quick 4 to 5 minute story from my aviation background that it's a good analogous picture of what we're talking about. And I'll throw out a question or two and then let the discussion commence, kind of thing. But it came from my experience in the F-4 Phantom in the Air Force fighter community. And there was one day where we had two airplanes in a war game scenario out at an operation was referred to as Red Flag, where it was combat training kind of thing. And of the two airplanes, all 4 of us that were involved were instructors. So we were not brand new at what we're doing. We were actually involved in developing others. And what we did on this one, and I won't go into all the details of it, but we were going into the next day, we were going to actually drop live bombs for practice and all of that. So this particular day, we were dropping practice bombs to get ready for that. And when we were going into the target, one of the things that we had decided to do was do something that in those days was called the double 90 attack. And it was not a good combat situation because you became very predictable, but it was in peacetime, it was a good thing that added some safety. But what happened was when we were planning, and all of us are instructors, when we were planning for the situation, there was one factor that we did not notice. And it was interesting. And what it was when you look at the map of where the target was that we were going to, just north of the target, there was a mountain. And what we didn't notice is that the elevation lines going up to that mountain were kind of far apart going up to the target. And what that means is that the target was, the terrain was going up at the target. And what's interesting is our flight lead said that what we're going to do is we're going to, he's going to, drop his bombs, and then he's going to stay right at 500 feet to make sure that he didn't interfere with us as we rolled in to drop our bombs. And, but what none of us realized was that he was actually coming up because the terrain was rising, and he was doing exactly what he said. And as we rolled in, I'll just make a long story very short, but as we rolled in, there was a loud wham on the bottom of the airplane, and I kind of went like this, and his jet airplane filled our canopy. And we knocked off the war. We climbed up away from the rocks. We thought they were dead because that was at about 500 feet above the ground when that happened. And going back to the base, we declared an emergency. And they actually had one of the aggressor pilots that came out of nowhere, came up to us and did a bomb damage check. And he said, "I don't see any damage." And Mongo and I were like, "Are you kidding me? No way." Well, we went and landed and got down there, and there was no damage on the airplane. And we were so grateful to see that JD and Wildcat in the briefing room when we went in there. So all four of us were alive, and that was good, kind of thing. But the point I want to just get across to people is simply this: when you're going into a challenging situation, a couple of questions, and I'll throw it out just for some discussion in terms of the neuroscience of how your brain works and how your brain may be missing factors. What are the one or two factors, if you look back in your journey, perhaps, or if you look at somebody that you work with or a family member who, whatever, and you don't have to share anything that you don't want to, but, what are some times where there was that one factor that you did not think about or were even aware of? And what I tell people when I'm coaching them a lot of times is, what, down the road, Murphy may come on stage. How are you going to be aware? What you're going to do? How are you going to be ready? Kind of thing. And so I throw that out for you. And the whole point on this is to get people thinking about how their mental processing needs to improve, and how, they need to be aware, how they need to be ready if something doesn't come on stage. So let me just throw that out and just open it up for some discussion with the folks that are here. So let me just kind of let you guys contribute anything that you would like to in that context, because that's critical in today's world when you look at things that are not always academic. And if you're always going to your comfort zone, holy cow, so let me just kind of let you guys throw out any concepts, any discussion, any points that come to your mind that you would like to contribute.
Randy, I want to go first, but I think I need to go last because I've got so much to say. This is such a cool topic.
I
Your
understand.
your story is so powerful. I was on the bomber with you. I was so engaged. So thank you for setting the scene.
You
But
bet.
maybe Godana and Kim, you want to um, share us your opinion on what's going on in that experience when you're bummed away from your attention, or I don't know what else is coming up for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, there's so many examples. I'm thinking of my consulting work, right? From a transformation perspective, right? The mergers just happened, or you just spun off a company and we're moving along as a project team, and then something happens you didn't pay attention to, right? So
yeah.
At the start, yeah, the cultures are the same and they're going to merge. I'm like, not so sure about that. And then it really happens, right? The cultures are not the same and we have to deal with it. But that's kind of a work piece. I want to share some thought here. Like it's like the feeling, it's like you're in a tunnel, right? And so and this is part of as you're getting into what the brain is doing and how we're behaving, et cetera. But the feeling that I would express is, you're moving along, you kind of see the end goal and you're marching there, and you've kind of made a little tunnel around yourself, and that tunnel is like very cozy. And it's just, it doesn't give a lot of light on the side, which is why you're missing, to your point, you're missing what's out there. And so you just narrow too much. And so, the value of having someone or various points in time, I think there's maybe use that in the military after action review. And that might be
Yeah.
like, as you're progressing, toward the, the final rollout or whatever, is to make yourself on purpose, pick your head up, and look. So, I'm not sure exactly what's happening in the brain there, but, I think, we've all felt it. It's that you're focused and it's narrow. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to learn more.
And so let me ask you this, just a general question, and Jordana, you, Justin, or Kim, you can answer it. But guess what? We've all been in situations like that at some point. No two ways about it. But let me ask you this: what's the first thing you need to do if you ask me that? Or what? Let me ask you this: what can you do to increase your awareness that that is happening to you? When you think about kind of your awareness and all of that, when you found yourself in those situations, what's the one thing that you can go, oh wow, you know what, this is happening, boy, and
Yeah.
how would you, what would you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think just changing the scenery, right? Just, just stepping away, getting some folks that, maybe have no idea what it is that you're even involved in, bouncing it off of them. I've also kind of okay, let's just put it on a piece of paper, right? Again, you need a little bit of that time to step away.
Mhm.
And even, as I think about my coaching practice, I work with leaders, and it's like they're in it, right? And whatever they're doing, they're trying to delegate, but they're not, or this or that. And they're in that tunnel, that little narrow tunnel, trying to get the thing done, but they don't see how their behaviors are not helpful. So, again, helping them, and I'm sure you do that in your practice, right? Helping them kind of step away, get other
Mhm.
people, write it down. Yeah. So, not rocket science stuff there, but just, I think some tricks to get yourself out of that, kind of stop that pattern.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, Jordana, if you'd like to contribute. I know you've had like a 20-year career in marketing with people that you've worked with in a marketing department. Have you seen this kind of come into play sometimes there? And in what ways stood out to you as you looked at them? Oop, unmute yourself.
Oh,
Yeah,
mute, sorry.
there you go.
I said, Randy, I've seen it. I've seen it all across my career. I worked for very
Wow.
big companies on many different countries and 4 different continents, and now I run a small business. As you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
the 4th year, and the problems, obviously, the problems are kind of bigger in a financial sense with large organizations, but this factor of uncertainty and constantly changing environments hits us all, no matter if we are sitting in a big organization or in a small business. In a small business, I feel the boat shaking a lot quicker because everything is
Well
coming,
said.
back to me. And my challenge is I struggle. I only feel safe when I kind of have a sense of control. And I
Mm-hmm.
see that I never have control because everything is constantly changing or coming differently than what I had planned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even in a small team of 17 people, you feel the dynamics like in
Yeah.
larger. So my question to you and to all of you would be, what can I as an entrepreneur do to kind of manage my own brain to deal better with uncertainty?
And thank you, because that was a question I was going to throw out to you guys next. So let me ask you this: just Kim, you or Justin, what just sort of stands out to you from your experience and knowledge and everything?
Justin, you want to go first?
We can't hear you, Jess.
I think you're muted still, Doc.
Sorry,
There you go. There you go.
I was trying to make some notes in the chat.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
in my experience, and I'm sure all of you would agree that tunnel vision is very good if you're trying to do a specific target, if you're trying to get a bullseye at whatever you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So being in the zone, as it was or is called, is having that attention is very demanding. And if you want to get results, you need to be focused. So if you want to control the environment, you need to be very focused, and that can have a result on the neurotransmitters. So what I thought I would quickly do, Rain, it'll take me like
Sure.
1 minute, is
You
to
bet.
just take people through the let's call it the VUCA of focused attention and arousal, and what happens in the brain during that uncertainty,
Yeah.
that stressful environment. I mean, it's not chronic stress, but it is. You've got to show up. You've got to be paying attention.
Yeah.
So what I thought I'll quickly take people through what I call the NAD of paying attention, being vigilant, enhancing, focusing, building that stress, which obviously can cause chronic stress if it carries on for too long. If you end up in a war for too long, you end up, with post-traumatic symptoms, etc.
Yeah.
But the model that I've been playing with and I use in my coaching process is understanding what is the trigger, what is the norepinephrine that causes that arousal, what
Mm-hmm.
makes you pay attention, make you alert, what gets you into that conversation, what Kim, what puts on the blinkers, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
what gets you to be focused there, so that your brain can retrieve memories and make you focus and get you to be in the zone. And once you have that energy, that adrenaline, that norepinephrine leads into increased levels of acetylcholine,
Mm-hmm.
which improves the attention, improves the learning around paying that attention, so that you're not just running around all anxious and buzzed up on anxiety, but you're actually then getting to do a specific task. So the acetylcholine gets you to focus, and when you're in that focus place, you then need to get some dopamine going so that you can concentrate, you can sustain that state. So you need to get that reward, because it can't maintain for too long, because you've only got so much energy to do that. So I'll just quickly drop those notes in the chat just for
Cool.
people's curiosity. I don't know if that comes out on the recording, Donna, but in the VUCA-ness, Randy, in my experience, is that's when there's just too much going on.
Mm-hmm.
It causes complexity, uncertainty, becomes unpredictable. It's just when there's too much going on. So that's my take on it, Randy. How does that sound?
It sounds very reasonable. In fact, Justin, what you just said is one thing that I was going to throw out another question, because it's a good insight to what Kim and you both said, just combining what Jordana said and all three of you said. And it's simply this concept that when you're talking about that, being focused on where you're going and what you want to accomplish, being in that tunnel a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that, because you got to have clarity on what you're really working on. But when you talk about factors that were unexpected, that are outside of that tunnel, start to come on scene, when you look at the overall situational awareness of what you're trying to accomplish or that of your team, guess what? That's bigger, because you're aware of when unexpected factors are starting to come on the scene. And you know what? They're changing a little bit of your assumptions. And so, when you're talking about your team and you're talking about all the neuroscience that happens, and what Kim, what you and Jordana and Justin, all three said is exactly right. And when you bring that together, this aspect of the true situational awareness, has to be enhanced in so many people out there leading business teams today. Yeah, because not everything's just purely academic. And so are you aware of how all that fits into place? And when you're talking with somebody that's maybe leading their team, Kim, like you were kind of talking about with your business and my business, and of course, really something that we're all four interested in and do, you know, how do you connect with people? How do you communicate with people in a way that get them thinking about that and becoming aware of that?
Yeah. I think some of the times it's, that it's they've got burned before, right? So, that, that you can kind of get their attention, right?
Yep.
To, I don't know, is it I'll make it up. You can put a construct, right? Is it every quarter that the leadership team should be looking at, all the factors, right? And kind of go through that exercise.
Yeah.
Again, I think, you have to experience it. So maybe where they haven't been burned, how do we help them experience that feeling to then be open, right? Because like you said, academically, yes, that makes sense. But then when you're marching toward your goal, you're like, yeah, no, I'm good. I know everything. I don't need to, I'm going to do this. I'm good. But yeah, you have to realize that you're always not good. And one other point, and I'll pass it over to others. I get to a certain point in various projects on the consulting side where I'm the one who's asking, okay, what's going to go wrong? What's going wrong? Like what will go wrong? What's going wrong? What's going wrong for you? Right. And how can we make it go wrong? Right. Like, how would we do this? So you kind of give them you flip I don't know if that makes any sense. We're flipping the way folks are thinking. And we're unleashing the creativity to say, how could you break this? Right. We could not communicate. We could, prevent people from taking training, whatever it is. And then you can get very creative. It's kind of fun, actually. Then, how can we break it? How can we, kind of do some bad things to make this not work? And then folks will think of other things that, they hadn't thought of. So it's a kind of a fun team activity.
And it can generate a little bit of the improvement in their ability to process some of those things that they didn't see before, perhaps. Yeah. Jordana, Justin, anything else? Anything to add to that?
Cornelia, you can go first if you like.
I'm just listening, finding it very interesting. I'm still wondering what can I actually do? I got now what Kim was saying, and I like it to simulate, the like the bad case scenario and unleash creativity. I just find it so difficult to focus because whenever I'm in a situation that I think I got a plan, like it changes. So
real world.
So what are you saying, Randy? Like, you've been through massive, experiences where it was life or death.
Yes.
Because something occurred, something unexpected occurred. What did you do to manage to stay calm, focused, and clear in your decision making?
Well, I think, and I'll just throw this out with just some of the stuff that I would contribute with kind of that question, but I'll just give you just a couple of just really quick answers. I mean, this will take about a minute and a half, probably 2 minutes. But after that situation where we thought, JD and Wildcat were dead, the four of us, and we're all instructors, we sat down together. And in fact, Mongo came up and he goes, "Is my voice shaking a little bit like yours is?" And I went, "Yep," kind of thing. Of course, the situation was over and everybody was alive, and we knew that. But we got in a room and professionally, four of us sat down and started talking about, as a team, what we needed to be aware of and how we knew we were going to not have something like that happen in the future, and to debrief ourselves in a positive, synergistic way, kind of thing, without just blaming things. But in the midst of it all, we were professional enough to know that we had to stay focused. We thought Wildcat and JD were dead because of the altitude that this happened at. And yet we had to get this airplane home. And so we didn't let ourselves get overly distracted with that. But I'll just share this one little story, because one of the two ways that what you're talking about, and Kim, with kind of what you're talking about generating a situation there that can help improve that mindset and the way their neuroplastic thinking goes. I've done a number of times in aviation, and one of the things that I've done to coaching clients, but also pilots, is I say, looking 6 months down the road, what's the one thing that could possibly come on the scene that would make you go, oh my goodness, oh man, I never thought that was going to happen? And I just say, what's that one thing? And what it does is it gets them from the processing standpoint and the situational awareness of how the brain working, using their processing frontal lobe here to really start to think about what are some of those factors. And now ahead of time, think about, okay, what am I going to do with that? And there's a lot of decision making when you're dealing with pilots that go along with that as well. And when you're talking about leaders in leading a team in this new unpredictable environment, they almost have to think about that. And you know what, while your team is trying to implement your strategy and get it done right, part of your role, you know, when you're looking at a military unit in combat, usually it's the unit that's doing the fighting and everything. But even though the commander may be part of that too, he's looking around because he's got to be aware of all the changes the enemy may be doing, or the other factors that may be sneaking on board that he didn't think about at the beginning. So he could point it out to his team and let them adjust in the way they need to, perhaps. And so there's a lot of aspects about that when you're talking about this changing, and you're talking about for situational awareness and real situational awareness at where you are and where you're going and what's happening. Does your leader have clarity on that? And are they processing the information well in such a way where they're not just making assumptions and trying to cast blame games, but they're trying to adapt and adjust and do what they need to do to really get radical results out of it and radical success. So you know, Kim, you kind of mentioned that aspect about you know, kind of doing that and trying to implement that with the people and all. And I think that's one way that I've done it, is said, you know, 6 months down the road, what's the one thing that's going to come on scene that would make you go, oh golly, I never considered that, you know, kind of thing. And if it does happen, what are you going to do about it? What's your team going to do? And so that's just, you know, in answer to your question, that's one way that I've done it. Let me ask you this, to Justin or to Kim, what ways have you maybe seen people sort of respond in a way that might answer a question like that? Have you seen that, or how are ways that you've tried to do it?
Justin, you want to go first?
Okay, I'm happy to. The model of situational awareness is so, it's everything, Randy. I love that.
It so is.
And you know, if we're not like aware what's going on, I mean, what else can we do? What else is there?
Yeah.
In my opinion, the situation has two facets or two sides. One is the external perception of, you know, the environment, the things that are external. So the perception of that situation, but it's also the neuroception of the interpersonal interception, well, interpersonal, the interception of what's going on. So the concept of neuroception is a very good one to explore. So if you look at the arousal that happens to you in the situation, you know, is that arousal useful? Is that stressful? Is that anxiety provoking? Is it overly rewarding? You know, what are you doing with all these chemicals that are pumping through your body and your brain? Is that neuroception useful to be aware of that situation, Andy? And as you become more aware of that, that only happens through, no, not only, but it happens much better through dialogue. So having the debrief after the fallout, having a coach to give you that space to become more aware of that internal as well as that external situation. So I believe that if you do that right, the oxytocin puts water on the flames, just helps things calm down so that you can, just by connecting with people, it sometimes just feels better. Good on, I'm going to give away a quick secret or quick story. When you were upset and our kitten ran away, and I was like, looking everywhere and scratching. I said, "What we can do?" And Donna said, just be with me now. He's just hold me. I don't need you to go look. We've looked everywhere. This is going to come back, but just be with me here." And I'm thinking, okay, well, the goal here is just to build a safe environment so that we can, problem solve elegantly together rather than trying to, be fighter pilots and run around. So my answer, Randy, situational awareness of the neuroception as
That
well as perception of the current environment you're in. So that's my take on it, Kim. What's your
and
thinking?
I'll just sort of throw this out, Kim, and I'll let you speak. But yeah, that you have my compliments on that, because that's the heart of the focus of what my goal is this with this roundtable, is that this aspect of neuroscience is such a critical aspect in unpredictable changing environments, and it has to be more deliberate than a lot of people think. So you have my compliments on that. Kim, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. I'm curious about, everyone has their own kind of personality styles, and however, you follow whichever, tool there is, Myers-Briggs, etc.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own talents and strengths. So I'm curious how that all comes into play, right? As we're working through this, right? So I'll just make this up. Maybe JJ, maybe you're more action oriented, right? And you're like, okay, let's just get it done. Let's find the kitten, get it good. Whereas making this up, Gordana, maybe you're I don't know, a bit more I don't know, feeling focused or etc. Right? And that's why you said, hey, just hold me and we just need to settle down here. And I made those up. But how does that come in to play here? Because I mean, we're all human, and so therefore we all have, strengths and styles and all of that. How does that weave through?
So I can have a go at this, Randy.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's good news and bad news, Kim. The bad news is that psychological assessment as a science is I have very little comment on it. So I know that you have expertise in environment, Kim. So maybe you should answer that question for us and help us understand how personality influences the situation, how we get in the way or get in the process of problem solving the situation. So maybe you can think that out with us. In terms of the neuropsychology of that, it's really understanding the cognitive bias. So does that cognitive biases and those heuristics influence behavior? Yes, of course. And what happens as those biases build up? A personality emerges. So in my opinion, it's about looking at the biases of the person rather than Myers-Briggsing them into, ESTJ or INFP or whatever else might be the profile. So that's the best I can do. Cognitive bias 101. What's your thinking, Kim? Kim?
Yeah, it's a deeper subject. And there's
very much so.
Yeah. And I hear you with there's, it's interesting. They can't just take people and put them in one of 16 boxes. But biases, and then maybe I'll even throw out this other piece, like their strengths, right? So just like what kind of how they're like natural talents, and how does that come into play? So I don't really have all the answers, but I'm always very curious about that, because if I think about, even coaching leaders, right, to say, okay, there was, or let's just say, we should be thinking about what we don't know in 6 months, what's going to derail us, and they're like, no, I'm good, right? What's their personality style? How do you, and maybe it's about influence, right? So knowing the situation, then how do you guide and coach them to to do that, right? To actually think about what, what in 6 months, what could happen that I need to know now that I'm, is going to be set us off the rails. So it's maybe a bit about, interpersonal and kind of how to work with leaders and influence them in that space, perhaps more so than, what do we do, right? If somebody is, if they make decisions based on logic versus based on people, well, what does that mean, right? How can you kind of influence that style? So maybe it's more about influencing than it is about, other aspects here. So just, maybe a question for you, Randy, how have you kind of dealt with that, right? Because not every leader is going to say, yes, of course, I'm going to, every 2 months, we're going to stop and think about what could hit us, in 6 months that we need to know. And then I guess that's, kind of coaching, but influencing. How have you done that?
And you know what? Thank you for asking that, because I was going to inject this. There's a couple of points that go right along with what you guys have been saying, and it's one of the questions that I've asked leaders before, or and it's a question for this is, how well do you really know your people? Because you know what? Every person that works for you is slightly different. And in my processing, do I understand how I really connect with my individual people? Because there's some people, as Jordana correctly said, there's some people that just need you to come by and go, you know what, I understand what you're going through. Yeah, I understand that didn't work for you. I get you. And there's another people that just want you to come alongside and help them make it work, kind of thing. And so when you think about the people and kind of how they think and how their personality is, to what extent do you have clarity on who your people really are and how you connect with them in such a way that it takes them past that failure or that one thing that's holding them back or whatever it is, so that they can really achieve. And so when you're talking about this, and you're right, Kim, it goes a lot deeper than that. But when that's one of the aspects in situational awareness that neuroscience has to come into play, because how much awareness do I have in my mind here of the, I'll just say 5 people that work for me or whatever? How are they different? What do I observe in them and how they interact with their people? What do I observe that is good and successful in working with them? And I had one guy that it was kind of a little bit humorous, but it's just sort of one little picture of the situational awareness of it. There was one guy that used to work for me when I was a site manager and the contract rep over at Griffiths Air Force Base. And he was one of my co-pilots. And I was standing there, but I could tell that the flight group was taking through, kind of exploring some unique ideas. Now, a lot of managers today would get in and try to control it all and all that. I didn't. I said, you know what? Let them ride this horse for a minute, see what they come up with. And what was amazing is they were going in a really good direction. And the co-pilot started to sit down. He had a pad and a pen. He was going to jot some notes on just kind of what they were thinking about. But halfway before he sat in his seat, he was about halfway down and he stopped, and you could tell in his mind, it was like, oh yeah, the manager's here. And he just looked up at me like this. And all I did is I looked at him and I winked and I nodded my head. And he just smiled and sat down and made some notes and everything. But it's like, you know what? There's some people that would not be an effective thing. But for him, that's exactly a positive interaction with him. And so, but he knew that the manager was paying attention to everything that they were doing. And the situational awareness is, what are they coming up with? What does this look like? Looks like it's going in a good direction. I'll let them ride for a minute, instead of trying to jump in and take control. Now, if it went to bad direction, I can always throw out a question, or I can always say, well, we can't go there, kind of thing. But those are some of the aspects when you talk about neuroscience and you talk about this aspect of how is your brain really being involved in a positive way or not. Yeah, go ahead, Justin. I think you were raising your hand.
I'm having such insight in this conversation, Randy, Kim.
Well, and hopefully good ones.
I'm scratching my head, which is indicative of what's going on for me. But the idea of situational awareness is really capturing my energy, Randy.
Cool.
And here's the idea that I've been playing with while I was listening to you. In situational awareness, if the neuroception is my attention and my awareness of my emotional equilibrium or dis-ease, and if my awareness of the situation is my social awareness or my social intelligence, it helps me have an emotional and a social governing around how my decision making is going. Because if I'm all over the place and anxious, and if I'm not engaged in what the situation, what the social cues are telling me, my decisions are going to be at best not the best. So, Kim, that was my insight. How does that sound relevant or irrelevant in terms of the work that you're doing?
I think that it's very relevant. And
So,
because all of
so
those
I'm
are
asking
aspects
Kim.
of this. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Kim. You can do that too. Yeah. But I
That,
think that's very relevant with that. So Kim, go ahead.
yeah, absolutely. And I was getting myself off mute. Yeah, so no, absolutely like that. I like the social piece added to that, right? But again, it's there is that, like you said, that kind of equilibrium. I mean, so there's stuff going on, right? And you just it's almost like you want to be able to kind of step outside of yourself, right? To say, now let me just see how am I doing? Am I a little working a little crazy here, or am I kind of balanced? But absolutely, and we all know that, right? When we're not balanced, then we can't make the decisions. We're just it's just not working. We can make a decision, yeah, but it's not the most likely not the effective one.
And I would just throw out as a collateral thought on that is, in what way as a leader are you getting in the way of your team's ability to do that? In what way are you causing all that to be disconnected so that you're decreasing your success and your situational awareness and all of that? And when you're with people that are listening, what times in your journey have you experienced that being disconnected or that being not successful? And so it's a key point.
It's an interesting point, Kim, that's definitely worth exploring. And maybe we should have a round table on it, is how your personality gets in the way of your decision making, of your social engagement, doesn't it? How does that get in the way or actually enhance it? So, but Anna, how does my personality get in the way of these round tables?
I got too used to it.
She just ignores you now.
Yeah.
It's very filtered, my observation. But I love this idea, Justin. Maybe you can, if Kim, this is your area. I think we would have a couple of members who would be very interested in, deep diving into that subject, personality and decision making, observation.
I know Gregory's got an opinion around archetypes and around how people's personalities get in the way or influence their decision making.
Influence is, it's a better way to say it. Yeah.
Sorry?
I said influence is a better way to say it than get in the way. Although that could be a catchy title.
We
gotta think about marketing it too. It's not just about the topic.
Obviously, if you've got a very focused kind of personality, you can get put more down on a spreadsheet than if you just carry on waffling away like me. So maybe there's something in there, but let's just use the last couple of minutes, Randy. Let's just round up what we are getting from today. What is the take home that we are wanting to get? I'm really enjoying this, so I just want to keep us on track and make sure I'm not taking us off piste into personalityville by mistake.
No, well, I'll just throw one comment out with what you two were talking about, and then I'll go through and let each of you kind of bring your summation of the benefit of today, and then I'll make one. But it's interesting that you guys talked about the personality. You know, Jordana, with the latest podcast Business News Network radio show that is going to be going up, and I'll be posting that probably in a week or two. I'm thinking probably after it's actually displayed. But one of the guests was on it, was talking about how executive coaching is not what it used to be. There is this aspect of the neuroscience, but also this aspect of the personality and how you're connecting with your people and developing all of that and everything. That is a key part in today's world going forward. And it's not just this rote academic thing. And that's where this neuroscience and our ability to think and plan and visualize and all that has to be ready, so that we can really see the truth of that situation. And it's really cool. So so you guys have my compliments on just where that was going. You guys, it's very aligned with kind of what we're talking about today, with this true situational awareness and everything. And that's a lot deeper than most people realize. And so let me just kind of take this and just Jordana, why don't you go first, and we'll go then Kim, and then Justin and I, and we'll just come up with kind of what your takeaway thoughts from today.
You're on mute.
You're mute.
Sorry about that.
That's good.
My takeaway is that what I'm experiencing in my current little world is something that seems to be a trend overall, and that there is an explanation why I feel like I feel. And my takeaway for what can I do better is just to understand that this is something that's happening in my brain. I need to open up and accept it as a condition that is permanent. Look at my co-workers, understand their world views, perceptions, and also question, why do they act in the way they act, because of what they are experiencing. Mm-hmm. And use all of this information to kind of be more, I think, more agile, more flexible, more open in my way of approaching things, rather than rigid like I would like to be, because it's simply easier. If you nail yourself down to a plan, it's so much easier to get it done than when there is constantly things messing with it. But I understand that is something that I need to embrace to be able to to maneuver in the future.
Mm-hmm. And right? And to get and to be comfortable in it.
Yes, that is what I'm taking away.
Cool. Thank you. Kim, any takeaways you'd like to share?
Sure. So Jordana, you mentioned agile, and I had written down an agile mind equals situational awareness, right? And so it's always being kind of scouting, but how do you build that into your habit, right? Of just, and not getting neurotic on it either, or psychotic, but just, that agile mind. And there's definitely an element of discomfort, right? Of like, okay, I just want to get this thing done. But yeah, it's probably a good practice. I could, stretch my muscles in that agile situational awareness space. So I had written that down, and then, just one other question, not for us to answer now, but can you imagine the amount of lost value that organizations experience when they're not having situational awareness and being agile and looking at what could happen? Like, I mean, it's just, we can't even probably count it, the amount of waste.
And Kim, you have my compliments on that, because that's the heart of why I'm taking this roundtable to where it is. Yeah, you have my compliments on that. Justin, any takeaways?
This is such a big thing, Randy. I think this is probably like a series of roundtables. We're only just scratching the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, the idea of neuroception of emotion and perception of the social situation, I really like that idea, obviously because it's mine, that's why I like it. But
Well, it's good to like your stuff.
exactly. I mean, even if you're the only one who does. But I think there is so much to look at, what's going on in our mind and our personality that influences that. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that a bit as well, Kim. My one takeaway is a mention of a quote. I can't remember what it was, but they said you can't work on your business when you're in the business. So you can't work on your brain when you are in the mind. You got to step out, be more mindful of the situation, and that's a project. That's a coaching dialogues environment, which I find so. More questions than answers, unfortunately, Randy. But I think that's the whole point of these roundtables.
And you know what? It gets people thinking. That's for sure. And it's the one quote that I remember that a girl 40 years ago, very in line with what you just said, that I was dating, saw it, and she brought me up to it. And it was go not where the path may lead, but go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. And you know what? That's the way we got to think sometimes. And so really, like I say, the big takeaway that I hope the listeners get from this is looking forward. What's that one thing that you didn't plan for that may come on scene? And how are you in your leadership and developing your team's leadership? How are you going to make it so that people are almost subconsciously proactively aware of when this thing comes on scene because you've given some thought to it? And to what extent are you getting in the way because you're totally going to rote academic things as opposed to being ready for true magical success? And so as you look in, I leave it with the people as you look in your teams going forward. What's the one or two things you need to do differently? What's the one or two things that your team needs to do differently? And I'd leave that for people that are listening. And it's an honor to have you guys on today. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great discussion, and I look forward to perhaps more.
Thanks for a great session.
A lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kim. Thanks,
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Randy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.